Hey, what's up guys, Chip Walters here, and today I want to talk about our second NITROX3D video. And what I will do is I will go over how to rebuild this box exactly as you see it right here. So before we get started, let's really quickly talk about a have-to-have add-on that I use, that Jerry Master Xeon 1001 provides for free, called Power Snapping Pies. And here's where you get it: GitHub MX 1001 Power Snapping Pies. What you do is you click on here and you download the zip file, unzip it, and all you do is you go to your add-ons folder and you drop it, that powersnappingpies.py in it, and then you go into edit preferences, of course, and you'll find it, Power Snapping Pies, and make sure you turn it on. Once that's done, you're good to go. And so Shift F sets it up, and in this case I may want to snap the cursor to world origin, which is what happens right here. So that's Power Snapping Pies. So here's our box, our main box, and let's select it. And one thing we can do, anytime we select something, we can come over here into the hierarchy panel, hit the period button. It's going to actually find it over here. So I'll click on the box, hit period panel, that's the plane, and I'll hit the / on the numpad, and that'll bring it into our local view. And I'll click here so I have a better view of our local view. So when I'm looking at this, I see that I have these modifiers selected, and there's this little plugin that comes with Blender. And let's find that. That's called 3D View Modifier Tools. That comes with Blender. Be sure and check that one on. It'll give us this little box, and I can turn this viewport viz off. So it's going to basically hide all of the modifiers for this object. So I'm going to look at this, and let's tab into it, and let's kind of examine what we have. So if you look at this, we have our vertices data is set to 1, right? So that's with all the vertices selected. So to do that, we'll come into, and we can go into the 1 button, hit A, we select them all, and then we're just going to drag that up and make sure that's 1. So that's going to give us this first bevel. So let's take a look at that quickly. And I'm going to turn that on. I'm going to turn that first bevel on. And you see we have a nice bevel there. And let's figure out what settings we have for this. We have 8 segments. We have a width of 0.1 meter. We're using, so the key part here is if we have to check this only vertices. And once we do that, we will have this set up exactly as we like it. And I want to choose weight because we're going to be using that weight. If I choose that weight, what's kind of cool about that is I can come here and select 1, and I can say the bevel weight for that. And I can adjust just that one weight as a fraction of the 1. So if I do something like 0.5, the radius is going to be half as large as, say, one of these down here. I do want it to be set to 1, so we'll leave it like that. So that's why we make sure we set the weight here for the bevel. Okay, now with that set, we're going to add the next, which is a solidify. And the solidify just basically extrudes out however long we want it. And in this case, we want to use even thickness and high quality normals, and we can adjust the dimension as we like. So, and what's nice about this, we can always come back in and change this at any time. It's pretty cool. So that basically creates our box. Now I'm going to add a Boolean to it, and that's this surface here. And so let's talk about that Boolean real quick. I'm going to come back out of here, and I'm going to look at this, and this is nothing more than another plane. And if we look at its modifiers, so first we will go into local mode for this modifier, and we will toggle off all of the viewport viz, so we see that we have only a plane. The objects, you'll see that we have a solidify and a bevel. And the reason why we're not seeing the bevel is because if you look down here in our plane information, viewport display, it's bound. So let's just change it to wire and we can see it a little better. And that's really, it's going to be negative, so we want to be able to see through it. But that is exactly how we made this. The bevel is going to be only vertices, and again we can click on the weight since it is. One of the key things here though, notice this little gap right there. Now I'm going to go back in and I'm going to turn this on and display it as a textured object, and I'm going to go into my clamp override. This is 0.071, and I'm going to basically make this width come up all the way. So when I do that, I'm going to get this nice ridge in here, which I really don't want. So I typically, what I'll do is I'll do the clamp override. I'll hold the shift key down. I'll come in here and I'll move it back. Actually, I'll probably go into my Q menu and turn on wireframe so I can see what's going on. And I'll take this width and I'll just move it back, right? I'll move it so I have it. There we go. So I make it so I've got a little bit of an area right here. So when I turn off my wireframe mode, it's going to look pretty much like I want it. Now I know that's not a perfect circle, but it's good enough for what we're using for right now. So let's get back out of here and let's go ahead and take that, look at it. We have a bevel and we have a solidify, obviously going back into it as deep as we want. And then let's go back to, instead of textured, we'll go back to wire. And I have a shortcut, Alt-1 over here, which with my mouse over here, I can always go to this pretty fast. So textured wire, there we have it. So now you see that we have that. So let's go back to here. So that's that first Boolean. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at how we create this cutout right here. And as we look at our bevel command, right after this Boolean, we had it set to none. And if you see it set to none, it's creating a lot of extra data. If we put it on angle, that's really a much better way to look at this. So we're going to leave that at angle for now. The next, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to turn this wireframe off and show overlays off. And I want to kind of show you what we're looking at here as far as what that reveal is. You can see it's a bit of a cutout, and that cutout goes all the way around the bezel, and it really forms the bezel. So this is the most tricky part in the whole model, and it's really a pretty cool hack. So let's figure out how we do it. So let's first go into local mode, numpad /. Here we have it. Take a look at this object. We'll go back over here and we're going to make it a solid real quick because we know we're going to be using that as our negative Boolean. And you can see basically what this object ends up being, right? The question is what do we start with? Well, we'll turn all the viewport viz off. And even in solid mode, you find out that there is no solid here. This is just 4 edges. So we don't have anything but 4 edges here. So let's take a look at what we do. We're going to add this screw in the x-axis. The screw is 0.3 millimeters. So I'm going to add that, and we'll see what we have here is we have an object that has a center line, and it's basically created this open frame for our object. And we did set the screw to 0.3 and the render steps to 2 and the steps to 2 and smooth shading. So those are all the settings that we set for this screw object. So now, once we have the screw object, I'm going to add the bevel object. The bevel object is going to take that same rim and it's going to add a bevel. And I'm actually using the same number of segments that we use in the over here. So we're going to use the same number of segments as we use over here. So now you can see, now what we need to do is we're going to have to get that to get a little bit thicker. And so we'll add a solidify. And we add the solidify, we add it in a direction that's 0. So it goes up, offset, and down. So we're going to actually have it so that when we finish with it, it's bigger than the object, and it goes into the object. So that makes it perfectly easy when we select this to basically make this a Boolean object. And let's go ahead and select this. I'll go over here, Alt-1, and show it as a wire, and now we have our object. So how sneaky and cool was that? So let's talk about these LEDs real quick. They're very basic, they're plain, but how do we position them correctly? So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to tab into this model, and I'm going to hit the 3 button, and I'm going to select this face, and I'm going to say Shift S, and I'm going to say snap selection, or I'm sorry, snap cursor to selected. Now I've moved the cursor to the middle of this plane, and now if I go back out and I just say Shift A and I do a mesh and a plane, it's right there, and I can basically scale it however I want. R for rotate 90Y, and now I know I'm directly on that plane. So, and I'm in the center of it. So how did I create those? So I'm gonna scale this down a little bit, and I'll move it forward just a tad. And let's just go into local mode here. First, I want to make sure that I apply my Control A. I'll apply my rotation, and I'll apply the scale. And so when I do that, it leaves my center where I need it to be. I didn't apply the location, so that's nice. Leaves the center right there. And I'll tab into it, and I'll do 1, and I'll basically, as you recall, we'll use the main bevel weight 1. And then I'm going to go ahead and add a modifier to that called bevel. I'm going to tab out of it. We can see what happens. Only vertices and the weight. So I turn on the weight, and I'm going to basically set my segments to something even, 10. Let's go tab back into it. And before I adjust this anymore, I'm going to go ahead and add a solidify. And that's going to give me my render. I'll turn off the wireframe mode. Right click on it, shade smooth. Go into my vertex, auto smooth. So we're at that. Now we have this basically crease right here we want to fix. So I'm going to go back into my modifiers. And in this bevel modifier, I will hit the Q button over here, hit my wireframe, and I'm going to go ahead and start shrinking this with the shift key selected. And as long as I don't make them overlap, just give them a little bit of room, breathing room, I can go back into Q, show overlays, show the wireframe, and now we've gotten rid of that crease. So that's nice. So I can go back out, and you see that's how we made this. Now, I made one, and then what I did is I just basically Shift D'd it and moved it over. And from this one right here, all I need to do is we're going to add another modifier, which is a mirror modifier, and we're going to mirror along the y-axis, and we are going to choose a mirror object, and I can just choose this one right here, and now I've got the other two set up exactly as I want. And as I move this one in and out, I can adjust the other one just as easily. So you say, well, why don't I use a circle here? That would make more sense to use a circle. Well, the reason why I don't do that is because if I want to lower the resolution, I can do so. If I make a circle, I have got to have a fixed resolution. So this is a real big benefit for me if I don't do that. So if I want to up the resolution, I can do the same. So this is the way we can create level of detail on all of the models that we create using the NITROX3D method. Let's go ahead and jump into these antennas real quick. They're pretty straightforward. If I select them and hit the viewport viz, you see we only have this one plane, and we'll isolate that, tab into it, hit A, and we'll see that we have mean bevel weight for 1 for all of these. So we'll look into here, and we see we have only vertices, and we want to hit this weight button and turn it on, and we have the same thing that we had before, where we were very careful to make sure that we didn't perfectly create a seam right here. So that's one of the key things. So that's the bevel. Then we added a solidify, and that gave us this, and that's pretty basic. We could use even thickness and high quality normals there. I always try and do that. Don't forget, we want to make sure that we shade smooth this. Let's get that shade smooth, and let's go into here and auto smooth it. Auto smooth it. There, we're good. So we're putting a bevel on top of a bevel. So how do we do this? Well, this bevel is basically just an angle bevel. We're using 30. And again, I'll go ahead and use my Q menu wireframe, which, by the way, if you don't know where that is, it's right here, wireframe. You hold your mouse over and you just right click, and you can say on any of these, add to quick favorites. And on this one, you could say remove from quick favorites. Again, as you can see, we left a little bit of space here in this particular bevel, but this is set at the angle. So here we're using two different bevels. We're using the vertice bevel with a weight, and we're using a regular bevel with just an angle. And that gives us the full shape of our antenna. Then, of course, the last thing we're going to do is just add the mirror. And again, if you look at the mirror, we're mirroring about this box right here. So if you click on this, let's turn the mirror on, and you just say click on this, click on the box, and now we have the mirror over there. So that's it for the antennas. Okay, so let's take a look at these connectors real quick. I'm going to hold the right button, hit the shift key. I'm going to put my cursor right here on the side, and I'm going to shift A and add a plane mesh to there. I'm going to rotate it about the X 90 and scale it about that size. And it actually goes in a little bit. I'm going to pull it out a little bit for better viewing. And I'll do a Control A, scale, Control A, rotation. So there, if we just look at this and we tab into local mode there, and I do the viewport viz, I've broken it out into a quarter. And if you look at this, you could say, well, that doesn't make sense. You could basically build that simpler by just using a square and then doing an offset. So let's take a look at that. So I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to tab this into here, and I'll do a inset like this, and then I'll do an extrusion, and then I will just kill that face. So we have basically an object that you'd think, okay, we should be able to bevel this all at once. Let's just select, actually we can just select them all, and let's just give them a mean bevel weight of 1. And then let's tab out of this, and we'll add a modifier. We call it a bevel modifier. And you can see, well, let's go ahead and make it a little smaller and make the segments maybe a little higher, 8. And let's make it even higher. Let's make the size just a little larger so we can see what we're getting. And we can do a shade smooth, and then we can add a modifier, which is a solidify modifier, and let's make it the thickness just really small. And let's go back in our shade smooth. Let's go ahead and make it auto smooth. So there is our object. And then we could actually add a mirror to this, right? So we're going to have to set the mirror point to the center of this. How do we do that? Well, we'll go tab into it, and I'm going to move over here, make it wireframe. I'm going to grab these 4 vertices, and I'll use my secret Shift S, and I'm going to snap cursor to selected. So there it is right there. I can also say Shift S and say origin to selection. So that puts it there. And now when I add a mirror and I want to apply it on the y-axis, you see that it hits up quite nicely. So, and that works. Now, so you say, well, why did I go to the trouble of making it less? I was just trying to get smaller in the number of vertices. So if I look at this and I say the viewport viz, that's what that's going to look like. And that could have left it like that. And how do I get smaller? Pretty easily. You select this, tab, and then select A, and then do a Q, symmetrize. I want to do X to X, which I've done. 3. No, I don't want these. These are faces. X, delete the faces. And X, delete the faces, and then I can basically select all, and then I can symmetrize it on the Y, Q. Nope, not Y. We're going to go Z. Here we go. Okay. A, Z, 3. Get those X faces. And I can add another mirror now before this mirror. And we'll get, so I hit the tab key now, and we leave all these on. I'll get just that part of it. And I can add another mirror inside here to get that. So that's the way that all worked. Fairly simple. So lastly, let's talk a little bit about the order of the modifiers as you add them to your scene. So we have a basic object here, which was the original enclosure. And first we added a modifier that would create these big round edges for us. And then we added a solidify so we could get the depth of it. And then we started adding booleans. And notice we put the first boolean that we put in was this one. And we put another bevel after that so that we would get a little bevel edge on here. But we did not want a bevel edge on this little parting line. So we put the parting line at the very end there. That's the reason why that was set up. So that's one of the things that you need to consider as you're moving things around, is where do you want those lasting bevels to happen. Of course, if we look at the ear, that was pretty straightforward. We needed to add a bevel first, and then we need to add a solidify second, and then we added the next bevel to get us a round surface, and then we added the mirror at the end. So that's pretty straightforward. So as you think through this, you sometimes need to move these around. This obviously was the most difficult one with the screw and the bevel and the solidify. So you just have to either memorize those or come back to here to get some reference for those. So I hope you enjoyed this particular example. I plan on doing more examples with different kinds of tips and tricks on how you can use different modifiers to get the desired result that you're looking after. Stay tuned for more.